AI automation is the most profitable thing you can be learning right now. What's up? My name's Kirk, and I run a school community teaching you AI automation. It's 2025, and everyone is jumping into learning n8n, a super powerful automated workflow building tool. In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to build your first AI agent with n8n that is a RAG chatbot system. I think this is the best way to get into n8n. I think this is the best way to get into learning vector databases. So let's jump into it. All right, jumping right into this agent build. Here I am in my n8n dashboard. I'm over here, my files project. I'm gonna come up to the corner, click create workflow. Come up here to rename the workflow. I'll name this RAG chatbot demo. You can name it whatever you want. So we're going to create the first node here. I'll click the plus to create the first node. Now you can always type in the search bar to find any nodes that you need, or you can search for nodes down here in the options. So what I'm going to do is just type in Google Drive, pop up Google Drive. So the trigger node we want is on changes involving a specific folder. Click on that. I have a connection to Google Drive. If you want to check out a more involved tutorial on setting up your Google Drive connection with n8n, you could jump into my school community. I've got the link in the description below. Check out that tutorial. Otherwise, I'm going to run through it real quick. So to connect Google Drive, we have to head over to the Google Cloud. You can search console.cloud.google.com to find the Google Cloud. I'll go ahead and set up a demo project here. So I'm going to come up, click this button, click new project, and I'll name this project n8n demo and click create. Now, if you have multiple projects, you'll have to select that project up here. I'll click in there and select my n8n demo project. There it is. I can click into this project, see the details. What I'm going to do is come over to the three little lines, drop that down, find APIs and services, and click enabled APIs and services. Now we can come up here to enable APIs and services button, click on that. We're going to search for Google Drive. Here it is, Google Drive API, click on that and click enable. All right, we've got Google Drive API enabled. I'm going to come over here to the sidebar on the left, click on OAuth consent screen, and we'll set up a new app for our Google Drive connection. So what we want to click on here is external, click create. We can put in the app name. I'll just call this n8n demo. You can put in a supporting email here and scroll all the way down, enter in your email here again, then click save and continue. It's going to bring us to the scopes section. We can scroll all the way down, click continue. In the test users section, we can come down, click save and continue. And in the summary, scroll down, go back to dashboard. Great. So now we have our n8n demo set up here. What we actually need is in the credentials section over here. Click on that. And we're going to come up to create credentials. Click on OAuth client ID for application type. Drop that down, choose web application. For the name, you can name this whatever you want. Call it n8n demo. Now we need to scroll down and add an authorized redirect URI, not a JavaScript origins URI, but this redirect URI. So I'm going to click on add URI. Now we can jump back into n8n and get this Google Drive module started so we can find those URIs. So I'm going to jump back into n8n, come into my Google Drive trigger node here, click into the first box and select create new credential. That'll give us that redirect URI right here. Go ahead, copy that. You can just click on it to copy it. I'll come back into the Google Cloud console and paste that redirect URI right there. That looks good. Scroll down, we can hit create. And now it's going to give you your client ID and your client secret. That's what the n8n node actually needs. So I'm going to copy my client ID, come into n8n, paste that right there, back into the cloud and copy the client secret, back into n8n and paste that right there. Now we should have this pop up. We can sign in with Google, click on that, choose the account. And if you get this error, there's one more step we can complete in the Google Cloud console. So let's close out of this box, come back into the Google Cloud console. Here I am on the OAuth client created screen. I'll just click OK and I'll come into this n8n demo client ID here. This is where you can actually view your client ID and your client secret again if you need to. So I'm going to come into the OAuth consent screen. First of all, click publish app, say confirm, then click edit app and double check we have that n8n.cloud authorized domain. That should automatically pop up in there. Let's click save and continue and just run through this again through these sections just to be sure. I'll come down and save and continue. Great. Let's jump back into n8n. Let's try and sign in with Google. Choose the profile you use with n8n. Now you should get this Google hasn't verified this app screen. That is what we want. We need to click on advanced, click on go to n8n.cloud. Now you can authorize all the access to your Google Drive account. Click continue, and we are connected. We can close this box here, and we are signed into our Google account. I'll come up here and rename this. I'm going to name this Google Drive demo, and you can name it whatever you want, and click save. Great. I'll close this window, and we can see that new credential connected to my Google Drive demo connection right there. Let's go ahead and set some of these settings in here for the mode. Typically every hour is what I would like this to be polling. Since we're going to be manually testing anyway, that is fine. But if you're regularly updating your Google Drive folder and want this information to come through sooner, you can set that to every minute. I'm just going to leave it at every hour or even every day for myself. This means every day it's going to trigger and gather information from that Google Drive folder we set. So let's go ahead and set that Google Drive folder. We want to leave the trigger on changes involving a specific folder. We'll select from the list, and I will search for my actual Google Drive folder here. All right, so here I am in my Google Drive, and in this folder, I have a folder called n8n automation. This is the folder I actually want to automate, as well as this processed and saved folder. I can drop in all my docs and references into the supplementary assets here, and then process them accordingly with these two automated folders. So I'm going to go ahead and search for this n8n automation folder. Search for n8n automation. There it is. That is the folder I want to trigger. For watch for, click on this and we'll say file created. Under options, we can say file type all, search for all files. And now I can just click outside of this node or click back to canvas to back out and come back to our canvas here. I'll come up to the top of the workflow and save it. And now we actually need to drop some files in here to trigger this. For now, let's go ahead and move on to the next module. This is going to be Google Drive. Type in Google, find Google Drive, and we want to download a file. The same credential connection should pop up in here. Make sure that is the same connection you've used in the previous module. We want to download a file. The operation will be download, and we can choose from the list. What we actually want to do is download the file from the previous module. So we're going to select file by ID. Now we can run some data down here and get this information through so that these two nodes are working correctly. So I'm going to jump back into my Google Drive folder. I'm going to drop in the URL list sheet.csv. Drop that into my n8n automation folder. There we go. Let's jump back into n8n. I'm going to back out of the node and we can come down here and say test workflow. We got this error saying this node is not working, but this node has triggered. Let's jump into this node here and we can execute the previous nodes. We now see that coming through. Click on that and we've got that file coming through. We can view the information in different forms up here. This is the table view. We can see the JSON view. What we need to do to connect this one is look at the schema. This is going to be something more similar to using make.com where we can map these elements into the node we are working on. So what we need is the file ID. We can scroll down and find that file ID. We don't want permissions. We want the actual file. So here it is in the spaces, the ID right here. I'm going to click and drag this ID into the ID field. That'll link it up with the JSON. And then we can click test step. There we go. Now we have downloaded that actual file from Google Drive. I'm going to click out of this node, come up to save it, and we can move on to the next node. I'll click the plus to create a new node. This one's going to be our vector database. Now, if you haven't used vector databases before, this is actually the perfect tutorial to get you working through using vector databases and what they actually are, what they're actually doing. Very simple to work through this. So follow along with me and we'll set up your Pinecone vector database. So what I'm going to do right here, I'm going to come up to the search box and search for Pinecone vector vector store. N8n has a few vector stores you could choose from, but I found Pinecone is probably the most popular and for me the easiest to work with. I learned about vector databases working with Pinecone, so if you're new to all this stuff, pretty simple to follow along and get this one set up with me. So what we're going to do is add documents to the vector store. So let's select this node right here and we can set up our Pinecone credential. Now setting up your credential here is a similar process to Google Drive. We're going to have to go get the client secret, the API key to use the Pinecone vector database. So I'm going to jump over to my Pinecone account. Okay, here I am in my Pinecone account. You can choose to use the free version with Pinecone or the pay as you go, but whatever you choose, you will be able to follow along for free. So you can see my n8n index right here. Don't have to know anything about this, but what we're gonna do is make sure you're in the database section, indexes section, and we can create a new index. So just to show you from scratch, I'm gonna go ahead and delete my index here and create a new one. Again, once you're in your project, in the indexes section here, you'll be able to create your index. So let's choose a name for the index. I'll call it n8n, and we can set the settings here. So for the configuration, I'll choose text embedding 3 small. Scroll down, we'll choose AWS. Now, if you're using the free version of Pinecone, I believe only the East Coast region is available. If you're using the pay as you go version, we should have these regions available here. I'm going to choose Oregon for myself. Great, then come down and click create index. That'll create our index here. Don't have to know what any of this stuff means. If we go back to indexes, we'll see that index in the list here. We can click back into it simply by clicking on it, and all of the information we add to this vector database is going to get stored in this index. Great. So now we need our API key. Let's come over to API keys. We're going to create a new API key. Click create API key. You can name it whatever you want. Name mine n8n demo. Click create key. Now this is the only time this API key will get shown to you, so make sure you save it, write it down, keep it safe. I'll go ahead and copy my API key, close that window, and jump back into n8n. Now we can create a new credential. Come up here to the credentials section, click on that, click create new credential, and we can paste that API key right there. Click save, and our connection is set up. I'm gonna name my connection here. Name it to Pinecone n8n demo. You can name yours whatever you want. I'll click save. Let's close this window, and we can set up our Pinecone vector store node. So we want to insert documents, and we want to find our index from the list. We can drop that down and choose our n8n index. Now, something I like to do is add a namespace option. So if you click on add option, it'll come up with the options for this actual vector store node. Let's click on Pinecone namespace, and now we can create a namespace for our index information. So I'm gonna name mine rag chat demo. You can name it whatever you want. Now at the bottom of the node, we're gonna see some required nodes for this Pinecone vector store node. So right away, we can come down and click on this embedding node, and we can select from this list of embeddings here. Now, I use OpenAI, so I'm going to select this embedding. If you use another embedding tool, you can select that. I'm going to go ahead and choose my OpenAI embeddings. Now, one more time, we'll have to create a connection to this embeddings module. So if you don't have a connection already set up with OpenAI, I've got a tutorial on this as well. If you jump into the school community, you can find that video and set up your OpenAI connection with n8n. I'm gonna go ahead and just run through it quickly. So I'll jump into my OpenAI account. All right, here I am in my OpenAI account. In the general settings under organization, I can find the organization ID. Don't necessarily need that as you would in make.com. So we can come down to the API keys, click on create new secret key, name it whatever you want, select your project in your OpenAI platform, and click create secret key. Same thing, you're going to want to copy this key. I'm going to delete mine after this video. Write yours down, keep it safe. I'll click copy, come into n8n in the credentials section, click on that, click create new credential, and you can paste the API key right here. Click save, and that has set up our connection. I'm going to name this connection OpenAI n8n demo. You can name yours whatever you want. And one more time, I'll click save, can close this window. Now we have our new connection set up here for the model. We can leave it text embedding 3 small, and that node is set up. We can click outside of the node or click back to canvas. There we go. We've set up the embeddings node for the vector store. Next one it needs here for the document loader. Let's click on that plus, and we can select from the list of available document loaders. Let's just choose the default data loader here. For the type of data, we'll say binary. And if we come down to the bottom of this node, we can see it needs a text splitter. Let's click on that, and we can add from the list of text splitters here. Let's choose the recursive character text splitter. So we need to specify a chunk size. For larger documents, you're going to want larger chunk sizes. And for smaller documents, I could leave it at 1000 for the chunk size. And for the chunk overlap, I'll say 100. That node is set up. We can click outside of the node, and we've got our Pinecone vector store set up. Now we're going to add one more node to this. I'll click the plus here, search for Google Drive, and we want to move a file. We can keep that same Google Drive connection. We'll move a file. There's the operation from the list. Let's select the file from the schema over here. So we're actually going to need to run this and get that information through to be able to select that file. Not only that, we need to actually run that file through our vector store and get it into our vector store. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to back out of this node. I'm going to save the workflow. Now we can't actually test the workflow until this node error is resolved. So I'm going to unlink it. The way that you unlink these nodes, you can hover over the route and click the trash can. That will unlink that node. So now I'm going to go ahead and test the workflow. This is going to grab that file in Google Drive, download it, and send it over to be uploaded into my vector store. Let's go for it. I'll click test workflow. There it is. We see the workflow executed successfully. Now we have all that data coming through the chain here, and we can get it in Google Drive. So let's connect this module up and then take a look at what is actually happening here. I'll reconnect that node. Can drag around these handles to reconnect nodes. Then I'll double click on this node to edit it, and we can see that information has now come through the Pinecone vector store, and we can find it in our Google Drive node here. So the file we want to work with is the file coming through the chain. It's coming to the schema. You can scroll down and find that file. Again, we don't want the permissions ID. We want the actual file ID in these spaces. So for the ID, I want to drag and drop this, but we need to change the file get from list to by ID. Now we can drag this ID from the spaces in there. We can choose a drive from Google Drive, and we can choose a folder. So the folder I want to move to, let's take a look at my actual Google Drive. I want to move files to the processed and saved folder, out of my automation folder and into the processed and saved folder. That way, anytime a file gets uploaded to my Pinecone vector store, it's going to move out of the folder that's actually being automated and just simply be saved and considered processed, loaded into the vector store. So I'll search for the processed and saved folder, jump back into n8n, search for the folder, search for processed and saved. There it is. I'll select that folder. Now I can go ahead and test the step to run this node by itself. There we go. We got that folder moving through. So let's look at our vector store and see what actually happened. I'm going to jump over to Pinecone, come back to my database, indexes, and we can see my index for n8n right here. I'll click into that, and we see we have a record count of 3. We've got 3 records in this database. They're automatically created based on how Pinecone is chopping up your data by those chunks. So we've got that data in here. We can see the namespace came through from the n8n Pinecone node. Rag chat demo is our namespace. So if we wanted to search by namespaces, or essentially create different namespaces for different sets of data, we could see all of our different namespaces here and organize our data that way. Wrapping your mind around vector databases and how this stuff is stored is definitely a little bit daunting, but when you create a namespace, everything under that namespace is related to that namespace. So you can organize your data that way for yourself to keep track of what is going where. Great. So let's jump back into n8n. I'm gonna back out of this node, come up and save the workflow, and we are done with the first half of this. All right, let's create the chatbot to interact with our vector database. I'm just gonna zoom out and move my canvas up a bit. This canvas space, think of it as a desktop, and we're just throwing things onto our desktop. I could throw in a bunch of nodes in here and have them scattered all over my desktop for working with. The only thing that is actually going to affect the automation are the trigger nodes. What is happening when these things are triggered? So in this case, we can manually test the workflow or drop files into that Google Drive folder to trigger the workflow. If we have a bunch of nodes floating around, nothing's really going to happen with those nodes unless we have a trigger. But in n8n, we could have multiple triggers in the same canvas working space. As you're building stuff out, it's nice to have everything all in one view. You can go back and forth and see all of your different information in all of your different nodes that you're working with instead of having to switch your workflow over here. If you were to finish this thing off, you'd probably want to have things set up in different workflows. That way, some workflows can be running at the same time as other workflows, something like that. But for now, as I'm building this out, I want to see everything all in one canvas workspace. Cool. So I'm going to add another trigger. I can come over here, click add another trigger. This is going to be on chat message. Click on that and we can click out of the node or go back to canvas. Let's find our new chat message trigger and I'll just drag this one down here and build out this second workflow. So when a chat message received, now that this trigger is up here, we can see a new testing button to chat with our chatbot right here. So I'm going to come and click on the plus to create a new node, and we're going to select the advanced AI. This is where the magic happens in n8n. We want to create an agent for our chatbot. I'll select AI agent. We can use the tools agent. It's connected to the chat trigger node. That is fine. If we click on add options, we can add some system messages here. This is for your AI agent system instructions, similar to ChatGPT. If you're building out assistants in ChatGPT, you could build in system instructions to say, you are this, you act this way, this is how I want you to output the results. So for the system message, you can see the default message pop in here. You are an assistant that helps find documents and data for clients. Use the provided context to find specific data related to digital automation diagram and the school community. The client may want snippets of info or links to other documents. Now, if we come to the bottom of this agent, we're going to need 3 separate nodes down here. For the chat model, I'll click the plus there. We can choose from the list of available language models. I'm going to again use OpenAI. That is what I use since I have that connection set up. Click on that. That'll load in the same credential in this workspace we've used before. Pretty handy. And for the model, I'm going to choose the GPT-4o Mini. Now you can set the properties for the OpenAI chat model. You can set the number of tokens, the response format, all of that stuff. I'm just going to leave it open and click out of the node. Let's zoom in down here. Now for the next node, what we're going to need is a memory node. The AI agent will just store conversations you're having with the chat. So we can add in a memory tool. This is the list of available memory tools in n8n. Unless you're using these other tools already, definitely go for it. n8n has these integrations with these other tools, but if not, we can just use the window buffer memory. Looks good. I'll click out of the node and we need a tool node here. I'll click the plus. Here's the list of available tool nodes. And the one we're going to use is this vector store tool. Click on that. Let's name it school data. And for the description, this description is actually very important because I'll just go back out of this node for a second. This AI agent node is actually making decisions on when to use these tools. So based on the conversation that we're having with the agent, it'll decide, should I go to the vector store or not? And so we need to give context. We need to describe what this vector store tool actually is and what we're using it for. That way the agent can decide, should I go to the vector store? Is the question being asked? Is the information needed relying on me, the agent, going to the vector store? So pretty cool what these agent nodes can do. They can decide what tools to use, and you could have a number of tools out here doing multiple different things. The agent will decide which tool is best to get the job done. So we need to give it that context for us. What actually is this vector store tool? So I'll just delete this. I popped in here real quick. I'll enter back into the vector store tool by double clicking on it, and we can give a description to this tool. So this tool, we can follow the default text a little bit. We'll say retrieves data from the school community documents and references for completing automations. Great. Now the vector store tool node needs a couple things. We can see down at the bottom, we actually need our vector store. So I'll click on that. These are the available vector stores. We're using the Pinecone vector store. So I'll click on that. The same credential from our workflow up above should be connected. The operation mode, we want to retrieve documents, and we'll select our index from the list. There's our n8n Pinecone index. Now we can optionally choose the namespace we want to search, and our namespace back in Pinecone, we named it in the first Pinecone node. Jump over to Pinecone. There it is, our rag chat demo namespace. Come back into n8n, paste that namespace right there. So again, this is how you can separate your data in Pinecone and search using a namespace for the specific data you want. Great, so I'm gonna rename this node. Click on the name here and rename it to that namespace, rag chat demo. Click rename. Now we can see our rag chat demo namespace that we're searching. Just a little labeling I like to do. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit, rearrange these nodes a little bit. We can see we need a couple more things. In the vector store tool, we need a model. I'll click on that. Again, the available models will pop up. I'll select OpenAI chat model. The same credential should pop up, and I'll select the GPT-4o mini model. I'll click out of the node, and the vector store itself needs an embedding. I'll click the plus there, choose the OpenAI embedding, same credential, and for the model, it's text embedding 3 small. I'll click out of the node and come up to save the workflow. All right, guys, I think we are set up here. We'll just wait for this embedding node finish doing its thing. There we go. We still have that document inside of our Pinecone vector database, so we can interact with that data now with our chatbot. Let's give it a test. Come down here, click on chat, and we can type something in the chat bar. Show me the link to the JSON's doc. And there we go. Link to the JSON's document. Click on that link, and that brings us to our JSON's document. So setting up your database is going to be up to you how you organize stuff to find this document. I actually uploaded a document to the vector store that had the URL links on that document with all of my documents and all of those documents URLs. That was what I loaded to the vector store. So when I asked the chatbot, show me the link to the JSON's doc, it went and found the appropriate JSON's doc and sent me that link. So it's going to take some ingenuity on how you actually organize your data, but I could upload the JSON's document straight into my vector store and have the chatbot pull specific sections of this document and post it up in the chat. In my specific use case, I wanted to just have the link to the document so that people can copy and paste just like that from this document. So all of my documents are going to be arranged that way. But that is it. That is how you build a RAG system with a chatbot to interact with your data. Now, if you want to take this a step further and actually use this chatbot in other ways, if we go into the chat node, come into the chat trigger, double click on that, we can actually make this publicly available. I'll toggle that on, and this is the link to that chatbot. We can set some initial settings here, the hello message. If I actually copy and paste this into a new browser window, I'll paste it in there, and it brings us to the actual chatbot here. You could send this link to your clients, customers to interact with and access the information that you want them to be accessing. There are ways to customize all of this stuff, the welcome message, the first message here, the colors, all of that stuff, but I will leave that for another tutorial. Guys, that is it for this one. Super useful to start learning how to build out these AI agents. So that's it for this one. Congratulations on your new RAG system and AI agent chatbot. Check out the link below if you want to join my school community. I have automations just like this set up in the classroom. Once you join, you'll have full access to all of the automation templates and blueprints. You can download them for free. You'll have access to the group discussion boards, troubleshooting sections, and of course, you'll have access to me. So I look forward to seeing you in the group, and I'll see you in the next one.